Hey everybody, Matt with eEuroparts. I'm here today to do a McPherson strut installation video. This process is going to be pretty similar for any kind of car you have that has a McPherson strut. Today I'm doing it on our Saab 9.3 race car, but if you have a BMW, Mercedes, Volkswagen, Audi, Volvo, it's going to be very similar if you have a McPherson strut suspension, which is most of your modern cars. Struts are a major contributing factor to how your car rides, and people will put off changing them because they think it's hard and or dangerous, and it definitely is dangerous if you're going to use a traditional style spring compressor. We've shot many springs across this very shop and it's certainly not fun, so I understand why people would want to do that. That's why we designed this solution. You can get loaded strut assemblies in your choice of brands, combinations. We have some lowering options. You get Coney, Sachs, Bilstein, OE, and performance options for your European car. It's going to make it much easier doing a pair, your car is going to ride better, and it's a lot safer for you. Step one is you're going to have your car on the ground, and you're going to open up your hood, and inside your engine bay there's going to be an upper strut mount location. It's usually going to be held in with 3 bolts. Some cars have just 1 big bolt. You want to do this with the car on the ground. Then when you lift the car up, the top mount's gonna come off of its perch, and then you're not gonna have to fiddle with the lower bolts too much. If this were an original Saab 9.3, it'd have an eTorx bolt up here. Because this is a race car, we have our Krona strut brace in here by Krona Performance. We also have some custom camber plates which prevent us from using the OE style bolt. I'm just going to take out my 3 bolts. Remember not to drive away, so don't take those out and then forget that you did. If you don't have a vehicle lift like we do here, then you can easily do this with a floor jack. I always recommend getting both of the front wheels off the ground, even though you only need to take the 1 wheel off, and the reason is because it releases the tension on the sway bar. If you keep one side down, your sway bar is going to have tension on it. It's going to be harder to get the strut out and get your sway bar link off. So now if you look way up in your wheel well, you're going to see that your top mount is completely free. So I can actually move my strut around here, and that should be the same for you depending on how your assembly goes together. This is our sway bar end link, and this has to come off our strut. In most of our kits we actually provide 2 new sway bar end links, so if you're replacing the end link, it's going to be taking it off the strut and off the sway bar. For this, it may not be apparent, but there's 2 flat sides on the back of this link. And for us, it's a 17 millimeter and then a 19 here on the front. So in order to get this end link out, you're probably gonna have to tap it a little. Hold it up and tap it. Shouldn't require any significant amount of force. If it does, you're doing something wrong. Since this is a race car, you'll probably notice that all the bracketry for our ABS sensors and our brake lines have been removed. But on your street car, there's probably going to be a bracket over here somewhere or somewhere on this assembly holding your ABS sensor and your brake lines in place. You're going to have to unclip those. For us, it means cutting zip ties, getting this stuff out of the way. So now all we have are these 2 main bolts that hold the strut assembly to the knuckle to remove. And again, if you don't have power tools, you can easily do this with your hand tools. You're going to hold the flat side of the bolt, take your 2 nuts off. At this point, all we have left to do is to remove these 2 bolts. You're probably going to need a drift or a punch or something to get it all the way through. to the other side of the knuckle because it is a knurled bolt. It's meant to take up the slop in there so that this assembly doesn't move around and change things like caster and camber on your wheel as you're driving. So I'm gonna put new bolts in when I do this anyway, so I'm gonna hit these with my hammer. We take this thing apart a lot, so ours come out pretty easy, but if you have an older car or you're doing this after 150,000 miles, it's probably gonna require a little bit of hammering on it, so don't be worried if you really have to hit it hard. I like taking the bottom bolt out first. And then for me, this top bolt's gonna come out. So at this point, all I have to do, push my assembly back, and it's just gonna fall right out. At this point, I have my new assembly ready to go right back in. Just gonna feed the top up to my mount location. Sometimes it helps to have a buddy here. And don't worry about where the upper mount is, how it's oriented. We're gonna spin it so that the holes line up before we actually put it together. And we can line it up with a screwdriver either on top or underneath as we put the car down. Once I have it resting in there, just gonna put one bolt in to hold it. When you purchase a strut assembly from us, most of the time it's gonna have brand new stretch bolt hardware with it. Knurled bolts, again, these are important. They take up the slop in the knuckle and they give you real good tension on the actual assembly so that things aren't shifting and moving as you're driving. Super important in a race car, but also really important in your street car. Just gonna tap these in. We're gonna tighten this all the way down to until you don't see any slop in the knuckle, between the knuckle and the collar of the strut. Again, if you have power tools, it goes pretty easy. If you don't have power tools, get some. There is a torque spec on these, which we're going to provide as a subtitle in this video, but when we're doing this in the pits on a race car, generally as tight as we can get them is pretty good. So now you have an option. If you can connect your sway bar link before you put the car on the ground, then you don't have to come back in here. Sometimes you just can't get it to go back in the hole very easily. So you can what I like to do is just set the car on the ground and then put my link in, then you can jack it back up to finish tightening it. So let's see if I can get this in here. So I'm gonna wait until I put we're gonna wait till we put this back down on the ground and we're gonna get our sway bar link set in there. So now I'm gonna line my bolt holes up. Now that I have everything lined up, I'm just going to finish lowering this down very slowly. You don't have to come down you don't have to come all the way down. Sometimes you might have to get one or two in and then do some realigning. I'm not going to snug these down until I have the full weight of the car on the ground. I want the strut to center in the top cap here. Not a lot of room, but there is some room. Before I set the car completely on the ground now and I lose all the space in my wheel well, I'm gonna put my sway bar link back in. Again, it should go right on, no problem. It's a little bit awkward. All right, now I'm going to take my wheel back off, finish tightening everything up. We're going to be good to go. All right, so now if I had my standard brake line, it would clip right back into here, and my ABS sensor clips into here. I'm just going to finish tightening my sway bar link here. This is a lock nut on here, so you want it seated and tight. Now that the car's back down on the ground, I'm going to finish tightening everything up. I'm going to finish tightening up my top mount, and I'm going to torque my wheel lugs. Anytime you open up the front of your car like this and you touch your entire suspension, you definitely probably need an alignment. It's always a good thing to do just for even tire wear and to make sure that you're pointed in the right direction. If you're doing both sides of your car, this should generally take you somewhere between 45 minutes to 90 minutes. It shouldn't be that long of a job. You need a couple of hand tools. And you know, if you have power tools, that makes it easier. You can definitely do it with a floor jack or a bottle jack if you can get it under the car. You could even do it with the jack that comes with your car. It's a little bit more time consuming using that screw type jack, but again, whatever you have, you should be able to you know, use to get this done. It's not that complicated. Thanks for watching our short video today, and check out eEuroparts.com for your OEM, aftermarket, and performance parts needs for your German or Swedish car.